Most cruise dinners disappear from memory the moment the plate is cleared. The steak was fine, the pasta was fine, the dessert was fine, but every now and then a ship serves one dish that refuses to leave your head. Months later, you still remember the first bite. You remember the table. You remember the waiter. You remember looking across the room and thinking, this is why people cruise. After 10 years of eating at sea, I wanted to know which dishes actually survived that test. I have eaten over 4,000 meals at sea. Not a rough estimate, not a guess, not a number I made up to sound impressive. 4,000 meals across 10 years, 27 voyages, 11 different cruise lines, and more main dining rooms, specialty steakhouses, hidden trattorias, French bistros, teppanyaki counters, and late-night pizza counters than I can count on both hands twice over. I have had dinners on a ship that made me close my eyes, put down my fork, and forget entirely that I was sitting on a vessel in the middle of the ocean. Dinners where the waiter saw my face after the first bite and just smiled because he had seen that reaction 1,000 times before. And I have had dinners that made me genuinely wonder if the chef had ever actually tasted his own food before sending it out of the kitchen. After a decade of eating my way across every major cruise line sailing in 2026, from the massive mainstream fleets to the intimate luxury ships, I sat down recently and asked myself one very specific question. If someone handed me a single menu containing every dinner dish from every cruise line in the world, every steak, every pasta, every seafood plate, every dessert from every restaurant on every ship, and told me I could only pick 10, just 10 dishes out of the thousands available, which 10 would I choose? Not the fanciest dishes with the longest names, not the most expensive items on the specialty restaurant menu, not the ones the marketing department photographs for the brochure. The 10 dishes that actually delivered on the plate, in the mouth, in the memory. The ones that tasted so good I ordered them a second time on the same voyage, sometimes a third. The ones I still think about months after the ship docked, sitting at home, eating regular food, wishing I was back at that table. The ones where I put my fork down after the very first bite and said, out loud to whoever would listen, this is why I cruise. That is what this list is. 10 dinner dishes from 10 different cruise lines. Each one the single best thing I have ever eaten on that particular line, after a decade of trying almost everything they offer. No filler, no diplomacy, no participation trophies for cruise lines that did not earn their spot. Just the honest truth from someone who has spent 10 years and a small fortune eating at sea. Let us go. Number 1. Carnival Cruise Line. The warm chocolate melting cake. I am starting with this because no other dish on any cruise line in the world has achieved the cult status that this dessert has earned on Carnival. It is a small, intensely rich chocolate cake with a molten fudge center that erupts like a chocolate volcano when you break through the top with your spoon. It arrives with a scoop of vanilla ice cream on the side, and the contrast between the scorching hot, gooey chocolate interior and the freezing cold ice cream is the kind of thing that makes you involuntarily close your eyes and stop talking mid-sentence. The pastry team across the Carnival fleet produces thousands of these every single night, and loyal Carnival passengers order one every night of their voyage without exception. Some order two. Carnival's own chefs have publicly shared the recipe, and it has been covered by nearly every cruise food publication in existence. It has become so iconic that Carnival passengers judge their entire cruise experience partly by whether the melting cake was as good as they remembered. It always is. In a decade of cruising, I have never met a single person who tried it and did not immediately order it again the next night. If you sail Carnival and you do not order this cake, you have made a mistake that cannot be corrected until your next voyage. Number 2. Viking Ocean Cruises. The Osso Buco at Manfredi's Italian restaurant. Viking does not have roller coasters. Viking does not have water slides. What Viking has is Manfredi's, and Manfredi's has the Osso Buco, and that is all the reason you need to book a Viking cruise. Osso Buco is a traditional Milanese dish, a thick cross-cut of veal shank braised low and slow for hours in white wine, broth, garlic, and aromatic vegetables until the meat is so tender it falls away from the bone at the touch of a fork. The marrow inside the bone melts into the sauce, adding a rich, silky depth that no other cut of meat can produce. It is served with a traditional gremolata of lemon zest, garlic, and parsley, and finished with a saffron risotto on the side that is creamy, golden, and perfectly cooked. Manfredi's is included in every Viking fare at no extra charge, which means this is not a $50 specialty restaurant upsell. It is a world-class Italian dish served at a world-class Italian restaurant on a ship that U.S. News consistently ranks among the best for dining. Cruise Voices confirmed that Viking's destination-focused menus, particularly in the Mediterranean, rival the best restaurants in Rome. Manfredi's Osso is the proof. Number 3. Royal Caribbean. The bone-in Cowboy Ribeye at Chops Grille. Chops Grille is Royal Caribbean's signature steakhouse, and the Cowboy Ribeye is the dish that justifies the cover charge. This is a thick, bone-in, heavily marbled ribeye steak that arrives at your table sizzling on a hot plate, seared to a deep, dark, caramelized crust on the outside while remaining pink and impossibly juicy on the inside. The marbling in a ribeye is what gives it that rich, buttery flavor that leaner cuts like filet mignon cannot match. At Chops Grille, the steak is seasoned simply with salt and pepper and cooked over high heat, which is exactly how a great steak should be prepared. No sauces, no gimmicks, just an exceptional piece of beef treated with respect. The sides include a loaded baked potato, creamed spinach, and a wedge salad that are all solid, but honestly, nobody remembers the sides. They remember the steak. Chops Grille carries an extra charge of roughly $50 to $60 per person, but experienced cruisers consider it the single best value in specialty dining across the entire Royal Caribbean fleet. Book it for the first night when the restaurant is at its emptiest and the kitchen is at its sharpest. Number 4. Holland America line. The Baked Alaska at the Pinnacle Grill. Holland America has always been a food-first cruise line, the kind of line where the kitchen staff takes genuine pride in the quality of every plate and where returning passengers choose to sail again specifically because of the dining. Their Pinnacle Grill Steakhouse, available on most ships across the fleet, is one of the most consistently excellent specialty restaurants at sea, year after year, voyage after voyage. But the dish that earns Holland America its spot on this list is not one of the steaks or the seafood entrees, as excellent as those are. It is the dessert. Holland America's Baked Alaska is a show-stopping, table-silencing creation that elevates a classic cruise ship tradition into something genuinely spectacular. It begins with a base of moist sponge cake, followed by layers of premium ice cream that include a signature Ben & Jerry's Cherry Garcia layer, the combination of cherry ice cream, chocolate chunks, and cherry pieces adding a playful, indulgent twist to an otherwise classical dessert. The entire construction is then encased in a thick, swirled blanket of Italian meringue that the waiter caramelizes tableside with a handheld blowtorch until the peaks are golden, crackling, and lightly charred, while the valleys remain soft, pillowy, and cloud white. The visual drama of watching the meringue being torched at your table, the flame dancing across the surface, the sugar caramelizing in real time, the sweet aroma filling the air around your seat is almost as satisfying as eating it. And then you eat it. The first spoonful breaks through the warm, crispy meringue crust, hits the frozen, creamy ice cream beneath, and includes a bite of moist cake at the bottom. Warm, cold, crispy, creamy, soft, all in one single spoonful. It is pure textural magic and one of the most perfectly designed dessert experiences I have encountered in a decade of cruising. Passengers who have eaten it consistently call it one of the best desserts they have ever experienced, at sea or on land, and after tasting it myself, I agree without reservation. Number 5. Oceania Cruises. The roasted rack of lamb at the Grand Dining Room. Oceania is the cruise line that food critics, travel journalists, and experienced cruisers consistently name as the single best in the world for dining. And the rack of lamb in their main dining room, from a menu designed by legendary French chef Jacques Pepin, is the dish that proves why that reputation is earned and not just marketed. The lamb is a premium cut, roasted at high heat until the exterior develops a beautifully aromatic herb crust of rosemary, thyme, garlic, and Dijon mustard, while the interior remains a blushing pink, astonishingly tender, and bursting with the clean, slightly gamey flavor that makes great lamb one of the most prized proteins in fine dining. It is carved tableside into individual chops, each one perfectly cooked, and served with a rich, aromatic natural juice that enhances the lamb's own flavor without masking or competing with it. The accompaniments change seasonally, but typically include roasted root vegetables and a potato gratin that is golden, bubbling, and layered with cream and Gruyere. What makes this dish truly special, beyond the obvious quality of the ingredients and the precision of the preparation, is the context. Oceania operates with a chef-to-guest ratio of 1:10 on its newest ship, Allura, the highest in the industry, which means the kitchen has the time, the talent, the staffing, and the ingredient budget to prepare every single dish with a level of individual care and attention that larger, mass-market cruise lines simply cannot match. The rack of lamb is the dish that Oceania loyalists talk about the most on every cruise forum on the internet. It is the dish that has single-handedly converted thousands of passengers from other cruise lines into lifelong Oceania devotees who will not sail on anything else. And after eating it myself, I understand exactly why. Number 6. Celebrity Cruises. Le Petit Chef at Le Grand Bistro. This is not just a dinner. It is a dining experience unlike anything else that exists at sea or on land. Le Petit Chef is a technology-driven immersive experience where animated characters are projected onto your plate and onto the table surface, and they cook, prepare, and plate your meal right in front of your eyes in miniature before the real dish arrives. A tiny animated chef chops vegetables on your plate. Flames erupt on the table surface, seasons change across the tablecloth, and then, perfectly timed to the moment the animation finishes, a real waiter places the actual dish on top of the projection, and what is on the plate matches exactly what the little chef just prepared. The food itself is French bistro cuisine, beautifully prepared, 4 courses with wine pairings, and genuinely delicious. But the experience is what elevates it into something extraordinary. Le Petit Chef carries a supplemental charge, but passengers consistently describe it as the single most memorable dining experience of their entire cruise and one of the most unique meals they have ever had anywhere in the world. Number 7. Norwegian Cruise Line. The Tomahawk Ribeye at Cagney's Steakhouse. Norwegian's signature steakhouse has been a passenger favorite for years, and the Tomahawk Ribeye is the crown jewel of the menu. This is an enormous, bone-in ribeye with a long, dramatic bone handle that extends past the edge of the plate like a caveman's weapon. The visual impact alone makes it one of the most Instagram-worthy dishes on any cruise ship. But the tomahawk is not just theater. The steak itself is thick, beautifully marbled, dry-aged for tenderness and depth of flavor, and cooked to a perfect crust-to-center ratio that delivers a steakhouse experience on par with the best chop houses in New York or Chicago. Cagney serves it with truffle fries, creamed spinach, and a peppercorn sauce on the side. And the entire presentation arrives at the table with the kind of drama that makes every other diner in the room stop eating and stare. It is the kind of dish that you photograph before you eat, not because you want content, but because you genuinely cannot believe what just landed in front of you. Number 8. MSC Cruises. The Wagyu Burger at Butcher's Cut. MSC's specialty steakhouse has quietly and rapidly become one of the most talked about dining venues on any cruise line in the world. And the Wagyu Burger is the dish that passengers cannot stop posting about, talking about, and recommending to every person they meet who is even thinking about booking an MSC cruise. This is not a buffet burger. This is not a pool deck patty. This is a thick, hand-formed, restaurant-quality burger made from genuine Wagyu beef, the same ultra-premium, intensely marbled Japanese breed of cattle that sells for well over $100 per pound at specialty butcher shops on land and appears on the menus of some of the most exclusive steakhouses in cities like Tokyo, New York, and London. The marbling in Wagyu beef is so extreme, so evenly distributed throughout the muscle, that the meat essentially bastes itself during cooking. The fat melts into the lean tissue, creating a patty that is juicy beyond anything you have experienced from a regular beef burger. The exterior is seared to a deep, dark, savory char on the outside, while the interior remains a blushing pink, impossibly moist, and almost buttery in its richness. It is served on a toasted brioche bun with house-made toppings that complement the intense flavor of the Wagyu without overwhelming. At Butcher's Cut, the Wagyu burger exists on the same menu alongside Wagyu tartare with sturgeon caviar, roasted bone marrow with salsa verde and ciabatta crostini, burrata with beets and aged balsamic, and oysters Rockefeller. The company it keeps on that menu tells you everything about the level at which this kitchen is operated. This is not a cruise ship grill that happens to have a fancy name. It is a serious, ambitious steakhouse that happens to be floating on the Mediterranean. Number 9. Princess Cruises, the dry-aged porterhouse at Crown Grill. Princess won the 2025 World Culinary Award for Best Culinary Cruise Ship on the planet, beating out every other cruise line in existence. And the Crown Grill Steakhouse is a very big reason why. The dry-aged porterhouse is their flagship dish, and it is a monument to what happens when a cruise line takes its steak program seriously. A porterhouse is essentially the king of all steak cuts, a massive T-bone style piece of beef that gives you the best of both worlds on a single plate. On one side of the bone sits a thick strip loin, full of beefy flavor and satisfying chew. On the other side sits a tender fillet, buttery and soft and melt in your mouth delicate. You get two completely different steak experiences from one cut, and the bone running down the middle adds its own mineral richness to the meat during cooking. But what sets the Crown Grill's version apart from every other cruise ship steakhouse is the dry aging process. Dry aging means the beef has been stored in a temperature and humidity-controlled environment for several weeks, during which time moisture evaporates from the surface of the meat, concentrating the beefy flavor into something deeper, more complex, and more intensely satisfying than any fresh or wet-aged steak can deliver. The Crown Grill prepares its porterhouse over an open wood-fire grill that adds a subtle, smoky complexity to every bite. And it arrives at the table with a crust that shatters into the juiciest, most flavorful interior you have ever tasted. Princess also brought in Darren McGrady, the former royal chef who once cooked for Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana, to help develop their dining program, which gives you a sense of how seriously this cruise line takes the food it puts in front of its passengers. The porterhouse at Crown Grill is not just the best steak on Princess. It is one of the best steaks I have eaten anywhere in the world, on land or at sea. Number 10. Disney Cruise Line, the Grand Soufflé at Remy. Disney's Remy restaurant is the crown jewel of their entire fleet's dining program, a formal French fine dining experience that has earned recognition from food critics as one of the best restaurants at sea. Full stop, regardless of cruise line or price point. Named after the cooking rat from the Pixar film Ratatouille, Remy serves a multi-course French tasting menu with wine pairings in an intimate, elegantly appointed dining room that seats fewer than 100 guests per evening. And the Grand Soufflé, served as the breathtaking finale of that multi-course journey, is a masterwork of pastry technique that represents everything great about classical French cooking. A soufflé is notoriously, almost cruel, difficult to execute properly because it must be served the absolute moment it comes out of the oven. The structure is held together entirely by whipped egg whites that have been folded into a flavored base and baked until they rise into a trembling golden dome that sits impossibly high above the rim of the ramekin. Wait 30 seconds too long, and the soufflé deflates. Pull it from the oven too early, and the center is raw. Remy's pastry team times each individual soufflé to arrive at your table at the precise second it reaches its maximum rise. Golden and crackled on the crown, impossibly light and cloud-like inside, and infused with whatever flavor the chef has chosen for that evening's menu. Typically Grand Marnier, bitter chocolate, or Tahitian vanilla. The waiter pierces the golden-top tableside with a silver spoon, pours in a complimentary sauce, a carme anglaise or a fruit coulis, and the first spoonful dissolves on your tongue like sweetened air. It is the kind of dessert that makes you understand, physically and emotionally, why French pastry chefs train for years to master a single dish. It is also the kind of dish that makes you wonder why you ever wasted a dessert course ordering tiramisu or cheesecake anywhere else in your life. Remy carries a supplemental charge of around $75 to $100 per person, which makes it the most expensive single restaurant experience on this list. But the passengers who have eaten there, and I am one of them, will tell you the same thing without hesitation. It is worth every single penny. Here is what these 10 dishes taught me over 10 years and 4,000 meals of eating at sea. The best cruise dinner is never about the cruise line's marketing budget, or the ship's gross tonnage, or the number of restaurants listed on the brochure, or how many Michelin stars the consulting chef's land-based restaurant has. It is about one dish, on one night, at one table, in one moment, that reminds you why food is one of the great, irreplaceable pleasures of being alive. A moment where the noise of the dining room fades, the ocean outside the window becomes a painting, and the only thing that exists is the bite on your fork and the feeling it creates somewhere between your chest and your memory. Every cruise line on this list, from the massive Carnival fleet serving tens of thousands of passengers every week to the intimate Oceania ships carrying fewer than 1,000, has at least one dish that can deliver that moment. One plate that makes you put your fork down, look across the table at the person you are traveling with, and say something you mean with your whole chest. This is incredible. You do not need to eat at every restaurant on the ship. You do not need to try every item on every menu every night. You do not need to order 5 courses when 2 will do. You just need to find the one dish that your ship does better than anyone else in the world. Order it without hesitation, without worrying about calories or cost, or whether it is the sensible choice. And let the kitchen show you what it is capable of when everything comes together. That is what experienced cruisers have figured out after a decade and 4,000 meals. The magic of cruise dining is not in the quantity. It is not in the variety. It is not in the 23 kitchens or the 40 restaurants or the 60,000 meals per week. It is in finding the one plate that stops time, the one bite that makes you forget you are on a ship and remember that you are on vacation and that this right here, right now, is what it is all about. Now you know which 10 plates those are across 10 cruise lines from someone who has spent 10 years searching for them. Go find yours, and when you do, order it twice.